So Rick began beekeeping at the age of 12 when he took a summer job in Tisdale, Saskatchewan. So a lot of work on canola and big honey production out there. By the time he was 15, he'd got 50 beehives of his own in Saskatchewan. And by 18, he was grafting and selling queens to local producers. Um, so he's been at this for quite a while. Now he's 43 and he's been beekeeping for 31 years. So he's got a ton of experience to share and some of that sort of that magic mix of the beekeeper factor. So we'll get Rick up here to speak a bit about how he runs his operation and the little things he does to make it work.
Good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Rick Krystal from Krystal Apiaries. Yeah, I'm a 2,000 hive operator. Like you said, been doing this for 30 years. The last 8 years we got into selling nucs, right? And we make probably on average 1,500 nucs in the little nuke boxes, and usually keep about 500 for ourselves and sell 1,000. So over the last 8 years, we picked up a few tricks on how to efficiently make nucs and make money and look after them. But I do want to make a point about, like the last 10 years, it's been pretty hard to keep bees with all the challenges we got. And I think the number one challenge is keeping our varroa mite in check, right? And the most important thing, like if you don't keep the varroa mite in check, you're not going to have any bees to sell, right? Usually you're struggling just to make your nucs to get your numbers back and don't have anything to sell. And I imagine that's a number one problem for a lot of beekeepers here in this room. And so first thing is just like if you want extra bees to sell every spring, you have to be on your game for killing your mites. And killing your mites first thing in the spring or early season is the most important thing that you can do to get your bees to fall or into winter big and healthy, so you have actual bees that you can nuke and sell in the spring, right? So, but anyways, besides that, I'll talk about that a little bit as we get going. But um, first, I'll just start with how we start our spring and what we do when we come out of spring. When we unwrap our bees and all that stuff. Okay. So yeah, like there's 5 things I kind of like want to talk about a little bit. Replacing equipment, equalizing hives, how new nucs create potential growth and income for bees, making nucs is good swarm control, how important it is to treat your nucs when you make your nucs and knocking those mite levels down, the benefits of making nucs in nuke boxes. I know not everybody likes to do it. We've came accustomed to doing it over the last 10 years, and we actually really, really like it now. And we get, I feel like, a lot of benefits from making bees in nuke boxes. And I'll go over that as well as we get going. Yeah, so when we start in the spring, I never like to get in my hives too early, right? I leave my winter wraps on as long as I possibly can, right? I like to see good pollen flow coming. I want to know that my bees inside that hive, they're hatching out bees. New bees are coming out before I mess with my hives, right? So before I pull the wraps, I want to make sure, again, there's new bees and the hive is healthy enough to be messing with it. Because if you get in that hive too early and you try to make your nucs too early, you're going to stress that hive out a bit and you're going to set that hive backwards. So timing is everything when you go to make your nucs, especially early spring. And when a commercial operator, we have no choice. We have to get going early, right? So sometimes we are pushing that limit on when we should be in the hive and when we shouldn't be in the hive. But I just have to say, be patient and wait for the right timing. Beekeeping isn't done by a calendar. It's Mother Nature tells you when you can beekeep and when you can't, right? So you got to listen. So when we pull our wraps off, we start nuking right away, right? And while we're doing that, we are equalizing our hives, checking for hive health, putting treatments in. So we're not just nuking, we're doing multiple things when we do it. So when we do our first round, we're taking care of quite a bit of the beekeeping, so we don't have to come back for almost a month, right? So how we do that is, you know, we we knock everything down to 3 frames of brood. With 3 frames of brood in the center. Like, sorry, I run mostly singles, eh? I don't run many doubles, but if I ran doubles, it'd be the same kind of setup anyways. We just nuke, if it's a big hive, we nuke it all the way down to 3 frames of brood. If it's a single, we nuke it down to 2, 3 frames of brood, right? And then usually we leave the old queen. We take the brood first thing in the spring, and then introduce like a bot queen or a foreign queen to the nuke. The reason for that is I don't take the old queen right off the hop, is because we want her to keep producing and bringing on more brood as quick as possible. So if we put that 3 frames of brood in the hive and then put really nice laying frames beside it, if that be an undrawn comb or already drawn comb, we'll usually put our wraps back on, and then we don't have to come back for a month. And usually in a month when we come back, well, usually within 3 weeks, that 3 frames of brood is popped, and that's a full box of bees again, and we're able to nuke those hives once more. And when we come back the second time, because we left everybody 3 frames of brood, the hives are almost all symmetrical. They're all exact same strength, which is nice to work with. And that's one of the benefits of making nukes, is being able to equalize all your hives in the yard. And you make these extra nukes and you get to sell them for whatever you sell them for, $250, $300, and you're getting paid to do your bee work, right? Which is nice. But again, you got to come out of winter with bees to sell. And that's the most important part. Making nukes is easy. It's killing your mites and making sure you get into winter with big clusters, right? Yeah, so we make the nuke. We'll let them sit queenless for 24 hours. We put the queen cage in. We usually make the nukes with 2 frames of brood, frame of bees and honey, and then usually shake some extra bees just to make sure the brood is well looked after. Especially early in the spring where we can still get the cool temperatures. You want to make sure you get lots of bees with that brood. Sometimes if it's a late season and there isn't a lot of brood, we'll actually make the nuke up with less brood and just more bees. So I'll just put 1 frame of brood in and 3 frames of bees, especially if I think the nights are going to drop into like -5, -10. We just more bees, less brood, make sure the bees can protect that brood, right? You want to make your nuke strong. If you don't, you're going to get caught with cold weather early in the spring and potentially send your nukes backwards, right? Yeah, so first round, because we have no choice, we have to use, like if you're making nukes for sale and you want to make lots of them, we have no choice. We have to buy overseas queens to make the early nukes, right? And we usually do put early nukes in, or overseas queens in to about the second or third week of May, until we can start producing our own queen cells. And once our queen cells come out and we stop using overseas queens, and now we use the queen cell. And then we'll start maybe stealing last year's queen, putting her in the nuke for sale, and replacing with an old queen. And again, that's also another huge benefit to making nuke for sale, is that you quite often get to replace a lot of your old queens with new queens. And just like any livestock, young stock is good stock and produces the most. So you want good success with your bees, keep young stock, right? And you'll have better producers. Yeah. Next. So here's a good example of like what a nuke can do for you if you do it right. Like there's 2 ways to make income like with a nuke. So you make a strong nuke up in the spring. again, we're pretty standard. It's 2 frames of brood, a frame of bees. These were made up with queen cells in say the 3rd or 4th week of May. Usually the queen's mated by the 1st week of June. These don't go to any pollinations, nothing like that. They just go into a yard that we know that's probably got good honey flow or good nectar flow, and we just leave them alone. And generally, they can make you 1 or 2 good boxes of honey, right? And get enough money to cover their costs. And sometimes costs are queens, feeding, treating your hives, etc. Making the nuke up with a queen cell is me personally my favorite way to do it. Some beekeepers don't like doing it because they think there's just too much of a stall in the nuke. There might be a little bit, but like I think maybe you lose 7 to 10 days, but not a big deal. The benefits outweigh what you're gonna lose. Our queen cell hives that we do are always our best hives. We call them our money makers, right? Because not only do we usually get 1 or 2 boxes of honey out of them throughout the season, and usually generate enough money just to cover the costs for making it and treating it, but they usually go into winter, our biggest colonies, and come out of winter, our biggest colonies. And the following spring, normally I can take 3 or 4 nukes out of these hives. And I think the reason for we've developed a technique over the years that I stole from Randy Oliver, Scientific Beekeeping. He published this a long time ago, and we thought, oh, let's just try this and see what happens. And you know what? We've been doing it the last 4 years, and it's been very successful. Our nucleus colonies that we make with the queen cells have, well, again, we call them our money makers because 90% of them always make winter, even 95% of them always make winter. And I can easily say 80% of them are bombs. They're big clusters that we can smash up into a whole bunch of nukes, and we're able to sell a bunch and keep a bunch for ourselves and keep our numbers up. But anyways, these hives, what we do is when we put the queen cell in, so you make the nuke up, you wait 24 hours or 12 hours minimum. Usually we just make the nuke up that day and then put them out that night. And the next morning, usually we have queens or queen cells to put in the nuke. But so when you put the queen cell in, generally you put the cell in when it's 10 days old. If you go back 17 or 18 days after you put the queen cell in and you go into your nuke, you'll see that the queen is normally mated. She's laying eggs. She is usually there's 3 or 4 day old larvae in the nuke. But the nuke itself is, I'd say, at least 95% broodless or more, meaning that all the mites in that nuke are phoretic, right? And when they're phoretic, they're really, really easy to get with a simple flash treatment. You got all your mites. You washed them right clean. We like to use the dribble method. It's fairly gentle on your bees. Doesn't seem to hurt the queen's eggs or larvae, right? We go early in the morning with exolic dribble, and we dribble the nukes on the 17th or 18th day when the nukes are virtually broodless. And that'll wash all your mites pretty much out of that nuke, giving them a nice run throughout the summer into the fall with hardly any mites. And you're going to go into winter with beautiful hives, right? We do this pretty consistent all the time with our nukes and our money makers, we call them, right? But anyways, again, back to, you want nukes to sell in the spring? Well, you got to kill your mites, right? If you let your mites get too high through mid-season, it doesn't matter what you do in the fall to try and get your mite levels down. It seems you can treat them hard, knock your mite levels down, but your hives are probably going to still die throughout the winter. It's so important to do early treatments and keep your mite levels low throughout the season. And there's proof, right? Again, I would say out of the 500 nukes we keep like this, 480 of them will come through winter. 400 of them will look beautiful. And we can take those 400 hives, split them into 1,200, and then I have 1,000 nukes to sell. I got more to keep again, right? So yeah, that's a trick we picked up over the years, and thanks to Randy Oliver, it works really well. You should try it. And queen cells are cheaper than buying queens too. Um, yeah, nukes, potential growth and income. Basically, yeah, make lots of nukes and you'll have lots to sell and make your numbers up. Um, again, we make 1,500 a year. Um, we can go, me and three other guys, we can usually do 150 or 200 a day. Um, yeah, that's, here's a picture of me and my daughter, which absolutely loves animals. Um, she'll take any animal and love it to death, like literally love it to death, right? She will make everything a pet, like a frog, a ladybug or whatever. But again, it doesn't live very long because it's in a jar in her room with no air or whatever, and it dies. But you'll see, like anytime we bring queens home, her nose is right in the cage. She loves seeing the queens and the bees, and um, but yeah, um, yeah, potential growth, eh? Yeah, I guess nukes, making lots of nukes. Like you, again, one hive, you can, if done right, you can make 3 good nukes off of it, and from 100 hives, you can make 300 nukes if done right. We like to use these wooden nuke boxes. It's a 5 frame wooden nuke box. It's got an entrance that we just made a little door for, so you can close the door if you don't want the bees to fly, and open the door if you want them to fly. We have 2 lids for them. Whoops, one's just a, one's just a plywood lid, and one's a lid with a screen on it. So when we're making the nuke in the yard in the middle of the day, we put the nuke in the box. We close the door. Once the nuke is made up, we put the screen on. We screw the lid on, and now we have this nuke that's totally screened in, got lots of ventilation, and we can carry it with us throughout the day. And that makes making nukes easy. We can spend the whole day, even if it's 20 degrees, making nukes. We're not losing any bees out of our nukes. We're keeping the bees in our hive. And then when we bring the nukes home, we'll just go put them out in their bee yard. We usually don't open them the first day. We'll open them the next morning. I think that helps from the bees not drifting too much. Um, and as you can see in our bee yard, that's kind of how we set them up. We'll put a pallet down, put 6 nukes on a pallet, face all the entrances different ways, so there's not any drifting or confusion. They seem to orientate better to their nuke if you put their entrances different ways. You get more consistency of everything being equal. Um, Swarming. Yeah, swarming. Nukes is a great way to stop great swarm control. You take the nuke out of the hive, and you give that hive lots of work, and you can take that swarming sensation out of the hive by putting new comb in there, and they have to draw that new comb, and they have to um, make new wax. And when they do that, they're less congested, and they don't get the sensation of swarming. And if you don't get early, get in there early and stop the swarming. Swarming's once a hive gets the sensation to swarm, even if it's just a cup with 1 egg in it, it's already got the sensation. There's almost nothing you can do to stop it. Even if you nuke it, it's probably still going to swarm on you. So that's why it's important to get in there before you start seeing queen cell cups, even 1 or 2 days old, and nuke it and stop it from wanting to swarm. Because I put this picture up there because that's a good analogy to what a beehive is when it wants to swarm. It's like a pregnant lady. Once it's pregnant, it's going to have that baby no matter what. That's the same with a hive, right? Once it wants to swarm, it's having its baby. There's nothing you can do to stop it unless you squish the old queen or whatever, right? Um, but yeah, you don't want swarming, because when you lose you lose a swarm, you lose half your hive, you lose half your money. You won't have a hive that goes in the winter very strong. You won't have a hive that you can and make money off of next year. So having good swarm control is really important, and by making nukes for sale is a really good way to pay yourself to do your hive maintenance, right? Oops. Okay, yeah, treating your nukes. We just kind of went over one way. Um, a good way of treating nukes was flash treating your nuke after the 17th or 18th day of putting your queen cell in because the nuke is broodless, right? But it's, you know, when you make up the nuke, generally that nuke for the next 3 or 4 weeks, it's just growing, right? You don't have a honey box on it. Um, it's just growing. So why not be treating that nuke? Well, it's not doing anything, right? You know, after 3 weeks, normally you have to transfer your nuke into a full colony, but then it's got another 3 weeks where it has to grow into a full hive. So basically you got 6 weeks where that nuke isn't really doing anything for you, but just sitting there. So why not be treating it? Clean that nuke up, take all the freaking mites out of it. And you have a colony that's probably going to go into winter really, really good. So yeah, take advantage of that time where nukes are not producing anything or doing anything and kill the mites, right? There's multiple different ways of killing mites. You know, when you add a queen cage and the queen comes out and starts laying, there's not really a brood break, right? So you can't use the flash treatment method unless you do multiple flash treatments. Like you need to do 4 or 5 flash treatments every 4 or 5 days to get to that 28-day point where you take all the mites out of that brood, right? So if you're going to do the flash treatment method, make sure you follow through or else you're not going to get all your mites. 1 or 2 flash treatments doesn't get your mites. You have to follow through with 4 or 5 treatments every 4 or 5 days to get 90% efficacy, right? Ways of doing it is like, okay, well, Apivar, obviously, that's a 28 plus day treatment. Again, you can use a vapor, exolic dribble, formic acid. Formic acid, just be really careful on your nukes. Dribble vapor is pretty harmless to bees. But formic acid, if you put that on when it's too hot, or you don't have enough ventilation in your nuke, you're gonna harm that nuke. So I'd recommend, you know, 120 mil meat pad, and that's it. Or this guy has cut a Formic Pro pad, looks like a quarter or a third the size, and use that, and that'd probably be sufficient. Um, one of the benefits we find by just using nuke boxes over like making splits. So splits, you got this big box and, you know, it's big, it's a big piece of equipment. It's heavy. It's, you know, it's hard to trap the bees in a split. So it makes it like you have to go back either early morning or late in the evening to get your split and take it to a bee yard right away. We like making our splits or nukes, sorry, in, again, these wooden nuke boxes that have where we can plug the, excuse me, plug the entrance and put a screen on, because for the simple fact that we're able to carry it around with us easier throughout the day. Like here's a good example of, you know, a day worth of making nukes for us. We got them stacked 3 high on the truck. I think there's about 150 nukes there. And we were able to do that throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, go to our nuking yard, which normally where we put the nukes down, where we put 150 to 200 nukes into one space. And then again, the next morning, put the queens in. We like to, yeah. So there's the wooden nuke box there that has the screen on top. We use those if we have to introduce a queen and we have to wait a week for it to introduce and then for her to come out and lay eggs, and then we check the nuke, like, so okay, yeah. So there's 2 types of nuke boxes here. There's those wooden nuke boxes with the screens on them. There's a cardboard nuke box with a screen on it, right? So we use the wooden nuke boxes if we have to wait a long time for the queen to accept. Then we check the nuke, make sure there's eggs and larvae and brood, and then we transfer it into one of those cardboard nuke boxes that also has a vent on it, and you're able to open and close the entrance. and then sell it the next day. You don't want to make your nuke up in those cardboard boxes and wait a week or 2 weeks because it's just going to fall apart on you. When we're doing our second round on our bees and we're coming back, it's the third week of May or fourth week of May, and we start scooping the old queen, and then we will make them up into those cardboard nuke boxes because we know she's going for sale the next day, right? Yeah, and we make up the nuke, but like I said, 2 frames of brood, a frame of honey, extra bees, and then usually we like to put 1 or 2 frames of foundations for that nuke to work on as well. And again, like putting new frames and new equipment into your hive, it should be an essential way of beekeeping. I think it's really important. It keeps your hive healthy. The bees just making new wax on new equipment it's just healthy for the beehive. They always seem to just do better when you got new equipment. When you're selling nukes, it's actually a good way to get rid of old frames and get rid of like residues and stuff that may be in your hive. And by having the new comb, you just have healthier bees and they seem to winter better and do better. So by selling the nuke is a good way to replenish like 25% of your equipment or your frames every year. And that's another really big benefit to selling nukes and making nukes is getting new equipment in your hive and having nice new looking hives. And they're easier to sell. After a year or two, all your equipment becomes pretty new. And people that buy nukes like to see new frames when they buy a nuke. So